Some tragedies unfold in shadows, but Judy Garland's played out in the spotlight. At the height of her fame, she commanded millions at the box office, dined at Hollywood's finest establishments, and lived in mansions befitting silver screen royalty. Yet beneath the glittering surface of America's sweetheart lay a story so dark it would make her fictional roles seem tame by comparison. In today's episode, we share how this isn't just another tale of a fallen star. It's an exposé of how Hollywood's most powerful studio systematically destroyed its greatest asset, transforming a transcendent talent into a cautionary tale of fame's true cost. On a sweltering August afternoon in 1944, Judy Garland stood on MGM's most lavish soundstage, surrounded by $4.3 million worth of meticulously crafted period sets, equivalent to $71 million today, preparing to film the trolley song for Meet Me in St. Louis, and at just 22 she commanded a staggering $150,000 per picture, nearly $2.5 million in modern terms, making her Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's most bankable female star. Indeed, the studio had invested the equivalent of approximately $198 million today in crafting her image, and their return had been nothing short of astronomical. In her sprawling Bel Air mansion, Garland lived the life befitting Hollywood royalty. Her wardrobe alone, carefully curated by MGM's costume department, was valued at the equivalent of millions in 2025, and each evening she dined with Hollywood's elite at Romanoff's or Chasen's, the most luxurious establishments of the day. The public devoured every detail of her seemingly charmed existence, from her collection of rare perfumes to her custom-designed Cadillac. Yet behind the dazzling facade of America's sweetheart lay a darker truth. MGM's prized possession was, in reality, their most valuable prisoner. The studio's investment in their star meant controlling every aspect of her life, from her daily diet of chicken soup and black coffee to the pills that kept her performing through exhausting 18-hour days. Her contract, while lucrative, was a golden chain that bound her to an increasingly toxic system. The numbers told their own story. 5 doctors on MGM's payroll to monitor her weight, 3 full-time handlers to manage her schedule, and a weekly regimen of vitamins that cost the studio to maintain their star's grueling pace. Each film earned millions, but the human cost was mounting with every production. For the public, Judy Garland was the embodiment of Hollywood success. But the very talents that had elevated her to such heights, that crystal-clear voice, that innate ability to convey emotion, had made her too valuable to be treated as human. Thus the question wasn't if, but when, the facade would finally shatter. In the bitter Minnesota winter of 1924, a tiny girl with an extraordinary voice stepped onto the stage of her father's modest movie theatre in Grand Rapids. Frances Ethel Gumm, who would later become Judy Garland, was just 2 years old, yet something remarkable happened when she began to sing Jingle Bells. The restless audience fell silent, transfixed by this child who performed with the soul of a seasoned artist. That night marked the beginning of both a brilliant career and a profound tragedy. The Gumm family lived a precarious existence, scraping by on the earnings from their small-town theatre and vaudeville performances. Frank and Ethel Gumm's 3 daughters, Mary Jane, Dorothy Virginia and little Frances, became the Gumm sisters, touring a dying vaudeville circuit in their weathered Studebaker. They drifted from one boarding house to another, while Ethel painstakingly crafted matching costumes for her girls, often sewing late into the night by candlelight to save on electricity. Yet beneath the family's struggling show business facade lay darker currents. Frank Gumm's secrets, whispered about in small-town gossip, forced them to abandon their Minnesota theatre and the relative stability it provided. They fled to Lancaster, California, where they purchased another small theatre with borrowed money. It was here that young Frances's extraordinary talent began drawing crowds who came specifically to see Baby Gumm perform between film showings. She would stand on a makeshift wooden box, her voice filling the theatre with an emotional depth that belied her tender years. Ethel Gumm, determined to mould her youngest daughter into a star, possessed an ambition that bordered on obsession. Voice lessons, dance classes, and endless rehearsals consumed young Frances's childhood. But it was Ethel's most devastating investment in her daughter's future that would cast the longest shadow. The pep pills she began giving Frances at age 10, obtained from a friendly local pharmacist who never questioned why a child needed such medication. These pills, prescribed to help the young performer maintain her energy through grueling schedules, planted the seeds of a dependency that would haunt her for life. Their nomadic existence left Frances with no true home beyond the stage. Early mornings were spent in drafty dance studios, afternoons in endless rehearsals, and evenings performing until her small body trembled with exhaustion. Yet she learned early that tears or complaints would be met with her mother's sharp reminder: the show must go on. The stage became both her refuge and her prison, a pattern that would define her entire life. By 1935, when 13-year-old Frances, now rechristened Judy Garland, caught the attention of MGM, she had already lived several lifetimes in show business. The studio contract appeared to be salvation, a chance to escape the hardscrabble existence of vaudeville. Indeed, Louis B. Mayer's offer seemed like the answer to the Gumm family's prayers. But no one could have predicted how this teenage girl's transformation from vaudeville performer to movie star would come at such a devastating personal cost. In 1935, 13-year-old Judy Garland signed with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, a moment that would forever alter the course of her life. Louis B. Mayer, the almighty head of MGM, saw potential in the young performer, even as he cruelly dubbed her "my little hunchback," and that fat little pig with pigtails behind closed doors. The studio system's ruthless machinery was about to transform this talented teenager into a manufactured version of America's sweetheart, though the cost would prove devastating. From the beginning, MGM's control was absolute. The studio placed Garland on a strict regimen of diet pills and amphetamines, a practice that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Her daily routine became a carousel of pep pills to get through grueling filming schedules, followed by sleeping pills to combat the insomnia they caused. The studio doctors readily supplied these medications to their young star, establishing a pattern of dependency that began when she was barely in her teens. Mayer's obsession with Garland's appearance became particularly cruel. The studio put her on a series of restrictive diets, monitoring every morsel she consumed. When she was caught eating a full meal, the reprimands were swift and harsh. Garland later recalled how the studio would serve her only a bowl of soup and a plate of lettuce, while other actors ate full meals, an experience that fostered deep-seated insecurities about her body image. Despite these torments, or perhaps channeling them, Garland's performances reached new heights of emotional resonance. Her portrayal of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz captured America's heart, while her rendition of Over the Rainbow became an anthem of hope for millions. Yet even as her star rose, the studio's grip tightened. Every aspect of her life fell under MGM's control, from her public appearances to her personal relationships. The toll of this existence soon became evident. By her late teens, Garland's dependence on studio-prescribed medications had evolved into a full-blown addiction. Between her punishing film schedule and the constant pressure to maintain the studio's impossible standards, she began experiencing the nervous exhaustion that would plague her later years. The same system that had promised to make her dreams come true was slowly but surely destroying her. As the 1940s dawned, Judy Garland had become one of MGM's most bankable stars. But success came at a terrible price. The studio had constructed their perfect leading lady, but in doing so they had begun to dismantle the vibrant young talent who had first walked through their gates. The making of a Hollywood legend was, in truth, the beginning of a tragic undoing. In July 1947, Hollywood was shaken by devastating news. Judy Garland, one of MGM's brightest stars, had attempted by slashing with broken glass. This cry for help revealed the depths of despair behind the studio's glittering facade. Yet rather than marking the end of her troubles at MGM, it was merely the beginning of a 3-year spiral that would ultimately sever her connection to the studio that had shaped her life. The following year brought another crisis when MGM suspended Garland during the filming of the Barclays of Broadway. Her frequent absences and emotional struggles had become impossible to ignore, leading to her replacement by Ginger Rogers. The studio's publicity department carefully crafted press releases citing illness, but within Hollywood's inner circles, the truth about their troubled star was an open secret. 1949 marked an even steeper decline. During the production of Annie Get Your Gun, Garland's behavior became increasingly erratic. After numerous delays and difficult days on set, MGM was forced to remove her from the production, a decision that cost the studio dearly as they reshot her scenes with Betty Hutton. The strain of years of studio pressures, combined with her ongoing struggle with prescription medications, had reached a breaking point. The final chapter of Garland's MGM career came in 1950 when she was cast in Royal Wedding. Her performance in the early scenes made it clear that she could no longer maintain the punishing schedules demanded by the studio system. After replacing her in the production, MGM finally terminated her contract in September 1950, ending a relationship that had begun when she was just 13 years old. The split was complex, marking both a devastating professional loss and perhaps a necessary break from the system that had contributed to her decline. While her colleague Mickey Rooney would later dispute placing all blame on the studio for her struggles with substance abuse, there was no denying that MGM's practices, from their rigid control of her image to their use of medications to maintain impossible schedules, had taken a severe toll on their once brightest star. For Garland, the end of her MGM contract represented more than just a career change. It was the collapse of the only professional world she had ever known. The studio that had transformed a talented teenager into a global sensation had also played a significant role in her undoing. As the gates of MGM closed behind her for the last time, Judy Garland faced an uncertain future, carrying both the scars and the stellar talents that her years at the studio had fostered. After parting ways with MGM in 1950, Judy Garland proved her resilience with a remarkable second act. In 1951, she mounted a triumphant comeback at New York's Palace Theatre, where audiences discovered that the former movie star had evolved into an electrifying live performer. Her raw vulnerability on stage, combined with that unmistakable voice, created an almost mystical connection with her audiences. The pinnacle of this transformation came on the 23rd of April 1961 at Carnegie Hall. That evening, Garland delivered what would become known as the greatest night in show business history. The resulting album, Judy at Carnegie Hall, captured the magic of that extraordinary performance, spending 73 weeks on the Billboard charts and 13 weeks at number 1. The 5 Grammy Awards it earned confirmed what her devoted audiences already knew. Garland was more than a movie star. She was an artist of rare and transcendent talent. Yet beneath these triumphs, the shadows of her past lingered. Financial troubles mounted as quickly as her accolades. Her television venture, The Judy Garland Show, ran for 26 episodes in 1963 to 1964, showcasing both her incredible talent and her increasing vulnerability. Each of her marriages, 5 in total, ended in divorce, and her attempts to break free from prescription drug dependency were repeatedly thwarted by the very pressures that had started the cycle in her youth. By the late 1960s, Garland's performances became increasingly unpredictable. While some nights still showcased her extraordinary talents, others found her struggling to complete shows. In June 1969, while staying at a rented house in Chelsea, London, with her 5th husband, Mickey Deans, Garland's long battle with prescription medications came to a tragic end. On June 22nd, at just 47 years old, she was found dead from an accidental overdose of barbiturates. The world mourned not just the loss of a great entertainer, but the culmination of a decades-long tragedy they had watched unfold. Approximately 20,000 people paid their respects at Frank E. Campbell Funeral Home in Manhattan. James Mason, who had co-starred with her in A Star is Born, delivered a moving eulogy that captured both her artistic genius and her human struggles. Her death marked the end of an era, forcing Hollywood to confront the dark legacy of its studio system and its treatment of young performers. Judy Garland's legacy endures not only through her immortal performances, from the timeless Over the Rainbow to her transcendent Night at Carnegie Hall, but also as a stark reminder of fame's true cost. Her journey from child star to Hollywood legend to concert phenomenon revealed both the heights of artistic achievement and the devastating price of early stardom. In the end, she left us with performances that continue to move audiences decades after her passing, and a story that forces us to question the very nature of fame and its toll on those who achieve it. And now, I'd love to see you in the comments. Were you familiar with Judy Garland's journey beyond The Wizard of Oz? And what do you think about the way Hollywood's studio system treated its brightest stars? With that said, thanks for joining another episode of Old Money Allure, and cheers until the next episode.